White monopoly capital are worried only about protecting their wealth.
We are going to defeat white monopoly capital, and we are going to take back our land, we're going to take back our mines, we are coming for the banks as well.
More than 20 years after the end of apartheid, protests are again breaking out on the streets of South Africa, based on race.
We are in a fight, and our strategic enemy remains white monopoly capital.
It's even infecting politics.
Incidentally, it implicates the British PR firm called Bell Pottinger.
Could a British firm be to blame for stoking racial divisions in post-apartheid South Africa?
At worst, we were very naive in what we got involved with.
Black First, Land First is one of the groups that now regularly take to the streets, calling for land to be returned from the white population and assets to be stripped from what they refer to as
white monopoly capital.
The term isn't new, but it's become a furious buzzword over the last year, as the leader of Black First, Land First tells me.
White monopoly capital must be destroyed. It means that we've just been screwed, basically, by these companies.
The sudden popularity of terms like white monopoly capital and economic apartheid coincides with the British PR firm Bell Pottinger, no strangers to controversy, taking up a contract to work for perhaps their most controversial clients, the Gupta family.
I thought the Guptas was a controversy too far.
Lord Bell is the founder and former chairman of Bell Pottinger.
I said so, but I was ignored by my colleagues.
Over the years, you have represented a lot of very controversial, fairly dubious characters. Was this different?
I don't think I've handled any dubious character. I can defend them all, and I can defend the things I did for them.
Could you defend the Guptas?
No, I couldn't defend the Guptas.
So, who are the Guptas?
They are the most hated family in South Africa.
The three Gupta brothers only migrated from India in the early 90s. Since then, they've become so close to President Zuma that they're now collectively referred to as the Zuptas. In that time, they've also become multi-billionaires. And for many people in South Africa, it's hard not to connect the two.
The Guptas pounced when President Jacob Zuma was down on his knees politically. They sort of cozied up to him, they went into business with his sons, that sort of thing. And so he was quick to return the favour when he came into office.
Micah Reddy is an investigative journalist at the online news site Amabungane. They've been publishing the Gupta leaks, hundreds of thousands of leaked emails which show how the Gupta and Zuma families used Bell Pottinger to try to change the political landscape. It's hard to explain the grip the Guptas have on South Africa. They own mines, technology businesses, arms and manufacturing interests, as well as a TV station and a national newspaper. A recent report by the government's ombudsman in South Africa accused them of corruption on such an epic scale that it requires a whole new name: state capture.
They've bought a country for themselves. They've bought a president who dines with them, who takes instructions from them. A president doesn't even take instructions from his own political party. He takes instructions from that family.
Julius Malema is the leader of one of the main opposition parties in South Africa. But as a former ANC insider, he says he's seen the Gupta's influence at work for years.
They called Fikile Mbalula and told him they're going to make him a minister of sports. And it happened exactly like that. And then we raised it in the meeting where Zuma was present. And we cannot have a family that appoints ministers.
The Guptas and President Zuma deny any wrongdoing, but it's been alleged that to distract attention from state capture and to bolster President Zuma's position, the Guptas hired Bell Pottinger to run a campaign blaming the country's problems on the big businesses that dominate the economy, or white monopoly capital.
War against those people who undermine President Zuma.
Leaked emails between Bell Pottinger and Dudu Zane, President Zuma's son, who works with the Guptas, suggest the PR firm weren't just advising them. They were also being asked to provide talking points and advice on speeches, like this one,
and black people.
for political movements, like the ANC Youth League. Bell Pottinger also ran a social media operation. VoteSec, the blog and Twitter feed they set up, frequently criticised ministers who tried to block the Guptas. It criticised big white-owned businesses, and it republished reports with threatening titles like
South Africa's white minority warned they face uprising and Zimbabwe-style land grabs.
The blog saved much of its criticism for Praveen Gordon, who was hated by the Guptas and mysteriously sacked by President Zuma. He says the Bell Pottinger campaign, which he thinks was partly responsible for his sacking, was really a distraction technique.
Bell Pottinger's role has been to, firstly, interfere with the sovereignty of South Africa. Secondly, to attempt to mask corruption in South Africa. Thirdly, to plan and plot counter-attack on people who were standing up to corruption, who were attempting to expose corruption in South Africa, and thereby being collaborators.
The chief executive of Bell Pottinger, James Henderson, strongly disputes this.
There was certainly no intention of collaborating with corruption. We were trying to do a good job for a client in managing their reputation and defending them from a number of accusations, some of which were within the political arena.
The Guptas hardly ever speak to the media. The last time a member of the family did an interview, it was arranged through Bell Pottinger, and the journalist wasn't allowed to know who he was interviewing until he'd signed a non-disclosure agreement. He was never allowed to publish the interview because he wasn't even allowed to keep his recording of it. So, in an exceptionally rare interview, which I recorded and held on to, Atul Gupta, one of the three Gupta brothers, told me that Bell Pottinger was only ever hired to do corporate PR for their company, Oak Bay.
We always have some companies who are doing some sort of PR, and Bell Pottinger is one of the PR company in the group. I don't know what is this narrative come from. White monopoly capital, if you go research any revolutionary speech in this country, always exist. I don't know where these terms come from, believe me.
But it wasn't in common usage until the Bell Pottinger campaign, when suddenly it was all over social media, people were talking about it.
Actually, there's nothing like that. I don't know where this narrative coming from. I don't think so it belongs to any one of our professional advisors or anyone. I don't think so. I will be shocked. And it's very unheard of. They are very credible people, I believe. They should not do anything like that, neither us nor them.
The Gupta leaks showed that part of Bell Pottinger's role was also offering advice to groups like the military veterans, the ANC Youth League. Why, if they were hired by Oak Bay, were they also providing advice to political movements?
Not at all. First, let's talk Gupta leaks. There's no authenticity of Gupta leaks at all. I think they all every day perception mongering to drive their own agenda.
Everyone I've spoken to in Bell Pottinger, nobody's denied the credibility of the leaks.
But no one show me ever. No one have authenticity of these mails.
Would you say it wasn't accurate that Bell Pottinger were advising political movements?
I really do not know what they're coming from, where. If you know Bell Pottinger is, suppose our advisor, but I think such an ethical company should not be doing anything funny. Not at all.
There'll be more from Atul Gupta later in the week. But his account is very different to Lord Bell's. He was at the very first meeting when Bell Pottinger met the Guptas.
The first meeting was sitting listening to Tony Gupta tell us how wonderful he was, how he made so much money he never needed to earn any more money. He couldn't spend it if he tried, and he'd done all these things and he was so successful, great hero, and the country adored him and everybody adored him and he was wonderful. And then to show us how wealthy he was, he flew us down to Cape Town for lunch in his private jet. He went off for a meeting and we had lunch, and then we came back and then we spent the evening discussing what we would do, and it became quite clear what they wanted to do was mount a campaign to encourage what you might call black economic empowerment.
So that was discussed at the initial meetings, right up. It wasn't sort of come and be the PR company for Oak Bay Industries or anything. It was actually about this political campaign.
He never asked us to handle the PR for Oak Bay. Wasn't in it. It was the Guptas. Oak Bay came much later. And he never talked about doing public relations for them. But the conversation became quite clear. He felt that he was stopped from doing things because he was the wrong colour, and that white people only could raise money in South Africa.
And that's why he wanted this campaign for economic emancipation. It's for the family's economic emancipation, effectively.
That's why I think he wanted a campaign for economic emancipation, because it would enable him to improve the position of his company and do down the opposition.
Was it quite clear that this would be a very political campaign? Because I know later on there are emails that show that Bell Pottinger were offering advice on political speeches, on speaking points for political movements.
We didn't talk about what we do at that first meeting. We went away and made a proposal, and the proposal suggested that we should do various things, including organise people to march, to give demonstrations, to make a fuss about the fact that they'd got the vote in 1994, but they hadn't got economic power.
Lord Bell left Bell Pottinger last summer after a bitter feud with the current chief executive, James Henderson, which he says was at least in part because of the Gupta account. There'll be more from him later in the week too. Since the Gupta leaks, Bell Pottinger has become a toxic name in South Africa, with protesters holding up pictures of staff and targeting them online. Bell Pottinger have now apologised, fired the partner who was in charge of the account, suspended 3 others, and launched their own inquiry, conducted by a legal firm to investigate the claims that the company was stirring up racial divisions in South Africa. The former finance minister, Praveen Gordhan, says the apology doesn't go far enough.
All of the money that they made in South Africa must come back and let it be used for one or other kind of useful purpose in this country. But equally important is that the legal firm that is investigating Bell Pottinger, they must come to the South African shores. We want to see them. We want those that have been affected by Bell Pottinger's campaign to speak directly to them as well. But equally, we want the CEO in South Africa. Let him appear before one of our parliamentary committees or an equivalent tribunal and honestly tell us what did Bell Pottinger do in this country.
James Henderson, who runs Bell Pottinger, says neither he nor the lawyers conducting the inquiry will be going to South Africa anytime soon.
Well, the first thing that Herbert Smith report is going to do is actually ascertain clearly what work we did and the accusations that have been levelled at us, and highlight very clearly what it is that we did do and what it is hopefully that we didn't do. I would question whether there is a need at this stage to go to South Africa, because firstly they need to ascertain what we did and what we didn't do.
Praveen Gordhan wants Bell Pottinger to return the money that they made from this account to South Africa for some better purpose. Is that something you'd consider doing?
This is not about the money. This account has cost us reputationally, and in terms of the amounts that we've had to spend on reports, client losses, a lot more than that. This has been a very costly account for us. We have been targeted by a number of political parties. All of our employees have been personally targeted. With death threats, huge intimidation. There has been a huge impact on clients. We're obviously got a review going on with Herbert Smith. So there's certainly, it would be wrong to say we have made money from this account in any way.
Is it something you regret?
Of course I regret that we are on this issue, and there was a firm belief by the team involved that they were working for the client and the client's best interests. In hindsight, as you asked me, do I think they misjudged the political sensitivity? Yes, I do. But do I think that they were deliberately embarking on a racially motivated campaign? No, they weren't. They were trying to highlight an issue in largely a very responsible way. There wasn't an intention to play with race. There was an intention to highlight a very real issue. Knowing what I know now, clearly in hindsight, they got involved in a situation which was much more political than had clearly been anticipated by them at the time.